you to Clarence Dunaville. When I first heard about Clarence, I went and I Googled him, and I tell you, if you Google him, you will find incredible things. Then the first time I talked to Clarence, he said, "Oh, I don't know, there's a lot on the internet about me. I don't know if it's all true." But in fact, it is all true, and he's an incredible inspiration to me. And every time he says anything about me, the fact that a man who has done so much for our community, for civil rights, for people across the Commonwealth and across this country, would be here in support of me is humbling and awe-inspiring, and exactly why I want to continue fighting for everything that Clarence has devoted his life to achieve. So thank you, Clarence. I am the Democratic nominee running for Congress in the 7th Congressional District. We are going to win this seat because it is that important, because we need leaders in Washington who are working every single day to try and create opportunity for their community, who are committed to understanding the challenges and the concerns of the people they represent, and who are committed to trying to find and working to find long-lasting, impactful solutions to the challenges we face as a community and as a country. And most of all, we need public servants who are committed to service. We need people who are committed to being accountable and representing the people who elected them and sent them to Washington in the first place.
Absolutely.
And my background is one of public service. I started my career as a federal law enforcement officer. I worked narcotics and money laundering cases in DC, and from there I became a CIA officer. With CIA, I worked a variety of issues. I focused on counterterrorism for the entirety of my time with the agency. I also worked nuclear proliferation and political issues and drug trafficking cases. And fundamentally, what I was doing was I was collecting the valuable information that would allow our policymakers, our president, our diplomats, and our military to make the most well-informed decisions related to national security issues, and ensure that our policymakers had all the information, all of their questions answered, so that they could go to a negotiation table, walk into a room, and advocate properly on behalf of the United States with the best information possible. And overall, like any CIA officer, we were also working every single day to keep this country safe from the terrorist threat and ensure that our communities and our allies abroad had all of the information they needed to protect themselves. And back in 2014, after spending time overseas and spending some time in DC, we were based on the West Coast, and my husband and I were talking to our oldest daughter about where we might go next, and it was a little bit of a geography lesson. What about Kenya? What about San Jose, Costa Rica? How about Germany? And our daughter said, well, what about Virginia? And I said, well, how about Kenya? How about San Jose, Costa Rica? London? And our daughter said, but everybody we love lives in Virginia. Why wouldn't we go to Virginia? And it was an interesting question for my child to pose to me, and at the time we said, oh, that's very sweet, we appreciate that, and she ran off and started playing with her sisters. But it got my husband Adam and I really thinking about what it is that long-term we want for our children, for our country, for our community. And I loved my job as a CIA officer. It was exciting, it was interesting. I was passionate about the idea that there were some of the biggest questions facing our leadership, our government, and that I could go out and answer it, that I could help drive policy by ensuring that we knew what the lay of the land was internationally. But ultimately, we decided that perhaps we wanted to pivot from that public service to community service and invest in a community the way that I had been raised. I went to Tucker High School, not so far away. My husband went to Godwin. And our families have been invested in part of the community. And so we decided to take a bit of a leap. And in 2014, I left public service. We moved back to Virginia, to Henrico County. I got a job in the private sector. I started a Girl Scout troop. My husband became a soccer coach. It was all very suburban and good. And then 2016 started. And, you know, I remember the rising partisanship, the divisive rhetoric that was sort of started in advance, well in advance of the 2016 election. And then in the aftermath of the 2016 election, you know, I thought that it would end. I thought that in November of 2016, we would turn the chapter on what had been all that ugliness, and that we would start fresh, and it would be exciting, and we would all be happy. And in fact, I was really, truly disappointed. Perhaps some of the people in the room were as well. But what didn't stop was that level of just ideologically driven divisiveness that was permeating not just Washington, not just conversations related to politics, but frankly our communities. And my girls in their school were no longer allowed to talk about politics, because talking about politics meant there was a child crying on the school bus. And to me, that is wholly unacceptable. And so I said, what can we do? What can we do to get involved? And I got involved initially with the 2017 elections. And we saw what could happen in the Commonwealth of Virginia when people get motivated, when people believe that change is possible and that it's worth working for. And here in the 7th District, we flipped 3 seats that were considered unwinnable, and we came very close. We came very close in a number of other districts, and that impact, that statewide, we had 15 new legislators going to Richmond, meant that we got Medicaid expansion, which brought health care to 400,000 Virginians, and resulted in a lot of money coming back to the Commonwealth of Virginia that we are now able to invest in early education, which is unbelievable that we had spent years, because of ideology, giving up that option. But when I look at what happened, the successes of 2017, we need to continue building on it. Because what we saw happen in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the change in the conversation that led to that additional progress, is exactly what we need at the federal level. And at the federal level, we need to have a new wave of legislators coming in. And not just to flip a seat blue, you know, that's a nice way to talk about it, but not just to flip a seat blue, but because we want the change in legislation that will come with that change in leadership and that change in control of the House of Representatives. Across this district, we go from Culpeper to Henrico to Chesterfield to Nottoway County. We are a long, skinny district through central Virginia. The #1 issue that people talk about in this district is health care. People also talk about education and job opportunities, and whether their kids, when they graduate from high school, are going to be able to get a job that will let them earn a living, or whether if they go on to college, they're going to graduate with so much debt that they don't know how they're going to, invest in a community, buy their first home, or get themselves started on their own 2 feet. And people are concerned about gun violence, and people are concerned about broadband internet access. In so much of our district, people don't have access to the internet, and that's an educational issue, it's an infrastructure issue, it's a healthcare issue, and these are the things that people across this district are concerned with, and these are the things I want to go to Washington and work on. And there has been a lot of good work in Washington. We don't hear about it that much. There are good bipartisan bills that are currently before Congress, focused on gun violence prevention, focused on a variety of the other issues that I mentioned, but they can't get out of committee because we don't have people who are willing to work together, who are trying to find consensus, and who are trying to address the concerns of the people across our country, in particular within our 7th District community. And I am so excited to be running for Congress because everywhere we go, we hear about people who are ready for a change. They want to see a change in the tenor of the conversations happening in Washington. They want to see a return to civility. I want to get to a place where our children can talk about politics, and it is who's your preference, not an issue of who you are as a person. We should not have families in this state or in this country that cannot spend Thanksgiving together because politics has become such an incredibly divisive area. So my request to you all is this. I'm happy to answer questions. I thank you all for being here. We had an event in Chesterfield last night with over 100 people there. We have this event. We have another event this evening. We are getting out. We are meeting people. We are going to community events. We are crisscrossing the district. And I thank you all for being engaged because it's through your engagement that we can continue letting people know that there is an election, that the election is important, and that in fact change is possible in the 7th District. For far too long, people have said, oh no, it's a red district. That's it. And that's where the conversation ended. Well, those times are over. We have moved this seat from a safe, strong Republican seat to a toss-up district, and it is a toss-up district, which means we could win or we could lose. We are going to win, but that is but what that means is we need people to be excited. We need people to talk about politics in a polite way and return to a place where couple phone calls. I'm going to invest my time and my energy in something that I believe in and that is something that is important. And it's not just about 2018, because I want to see that change occur in Washington, D.C., but it is also about what we're doing towards 2019 and 2020, because where we can engage more voters across the 7th District, be it Culpeper, be it Henrico, be it Amelia County, that will be important in 2019. And when we are looking at taking one more seat in the House of Delegates to try and get the opportunity at eventually achieving a majority, or why limit ourselves? 5 more, I want 5. And potentially adding more seats in the state Senate. And all of the progress that we make this year will be important towards next year. And all of the progress that we make next year will be monumental towards what happens in 2020. And I thank you all for being a part of our efforts. I thank you all for coming out to hear me. If you already know you're going to vote for me, I thank you in advance. And for those of you who came out to hear me speak, I thank you for being engaged, for being curious, and for taking that step of educating yourself on what your options are. And I sincerely ask you for your vote in November. Thank you.
She really doesn't have questions if we have that.
What is the best way to work by parking away? Because obviously it's very hard to do that right now. How can you do that?
So the question is, what's the best way to work in a bipartisan way? I'm not being sassy when I say this, but have the desire to do it in the first place. Step number 1. And after that, it's try and find commonality. We are so focused in terms of, well, they're going to do this and they're going to do that, and a lot of that is absolutely true. And so we need to make sure that, we are talking about where are the roots of the issues that we have related to legislation. But there are so many issues that should not be partisan issues. For example, broadband internet. I mean, if we care about growing our economy, and we care about creating more job opportunities, and we care about ensuring that kids across our district have the type of education they need to be able to bring jobs and have jobs here in the 7th District, that should not be a partisan issue. And in fact, across the country, it's not just impacting the 7th District. Rural communities across this country have issues with broadband accessibility. So finding issues where we can find common ground is incredibly important. It's a great place to start. And there are groups in Congress that are focused on bipartisanship, that are focused on trying to find solutions and talking through some of the largest problems or biggest problems facing our country. And I think it's a willingness to have truly difficult conversations and focus on what are our goals and how can we achieve them.
Any other questions for Miss Abigail? Anything you want to know?
Yes. So the question is how to get involved in voter registration. I was actually just having a meeting back in our campaign office about voter registration. We have a number of volunteers who would focus on voter registration. If you sign in and put a note, I will link you up with the other individuals who are working on that. We hope to have a strong effort at the community colleges within the 7th District, so J. Sergeant Reynolds and Germanna, to make sure that people are registered. We also want to make sure that any younger voters who attend maybe VCU or the University of Richmond, that they know how to go about doing absentee ballots, either in-person absentee or remember to go back to their polling place if they're not too far on election day. And we also want to make sure that throughout our communities we are focused on registering voters, because there are a number of tens of thousands of people who are eligible to vote in the 7th District who are in fact not registered by the data we have.
We have tables at most festivals, so look for us to this out. And most of our nonprofits will have voter registration set up, like Listen, Go High, and
New Virginia Majority.
So we all have voter registration at our table. So bring us out and someone go along.
And then Tina, did you want to add something to that?
Well, this next weekend is Glen Day, and we're looking for a big presence for people to walk
you want to wear a t-shirt. There will be a parade if you want to march in the parade with us. For anyone you saw in the pictures or were there, we had a tremendous showing of people in the Powhatan Parade, which was incredible because last year it was not nearly as big, and this year, it was huge. And frankly, as we were walking along the parade route, and there were people just waving to us and excited because in parts of the district that are truly very conservative, for people to realize that there are other people who might vote the same way that they vote is motivating. Because if you live in a place where you see it's always red, it's such a conservative area, it's hard to motivate yourself when it's raining, when it's, you've got a long day at work, to get out and vote if you think your vote doesn't matter. And so it's important to us, within particularly some of our rural communities, for people to know that there is a strong Democratic presence, that their vote truly matters. And frankly, in a district-wide win strategy in our long, skinny district, we need to win in Henrico and Chesterfield, but we need to run up the numbers in all of our other counties. And that happens person by person, vote by vote. So anything that you can do to engage with people and just let people know that there's somebody else who might be inclined to vote their way around them, it's very motivating for people. So thank you.
And if you have any questions about the parade, let me know. Any other questions? Anybody have a question?
I have a question. So you talked about voter registration earlier. Getting people registered is one thing, that's great, but do you have anything in place to get people actually out to the polls? Because when it's all said and done, it comes down to turnout. And this county isn't known for great public transportation.
So we've got 10 counties in our district. Beachland County has the best voter turnout numbers. So if you're in Henrico, let's take that as a challenge to do better. But so a couple things that we're doing. One, we have volunteers who are organizing driving people to the polls so that people can get to the polls on election day. We actually intend to, and right before here I was meeting with the volunteer who arranges this, and he did it in the primary. And I was actually at a national night out event, and this woman came up to me. She had a cane, and she said, "I voted for you, and I voted for you because some nice man named Ken came and got me." And she tells me the story about how one of our volunteers knocked on her door to canvass, noticed that she was having trouble walking, and said, "Ma'am, do you have a way to get to the polls?" And she said, "No." And he said, "Can I take your number if you want to ride?" So he took her number, and our volunteer went out, drove her to the polls, and it was incredible for me to hear that that would have been her experience. So in order to get people out of the polls, one, we've got volunteers who are driving people. We don't want to just drive them on election day. Anyone who might have a disability or a mobility issue or an illness or any other reason why they should vote early, we also want to make sure that people who might have work conflicts, who need a ride, can get a ride and vote in-person absentee at the registrar's office. That's an option starting at the end of September. So we are going to be organizing rides earlier for people who have one of the qualifying reasons to vote in-person absentee. We're also continuing to do canvassing. We canvass every single weekend. In Henrico and Chesterfield, we have 4 shifts a weekend. We are canvassing in our other counties as well. We have phone banking, and so we phone bank in Henrico and in almost all of our counties every single week during the week. We're doing get out the vote postcards. We're doing mail. We're doing TV. We want to make sure everyone knows that this election is happening and when they need to get out. And I'm going to yield over to Tina with Henrico County Dems.
Yeah, I'm with the Henrico County Democrats. We also are going to be doing some ride the polls. But in addition to that, there is a tendency with voters to vote top ticket and not go down. So one of the programs that we do is a sample ballot program. Blue pieces of paper, hand them out, and I don't know why, even with 2 names, people sometimes, like in the last election, there was something like 10,000 people that voted for the top, didn't vote for Fidel. That 10,000 is the difference in around here. So we are looking for volunteers that can go to the precincts on election day, hand out sample ballots to the voters as they come in to ensure that they're keeping the numbers up. So there's so many ways to volunteer. So either through the Abigail campaign or go to Henrico Dems Facebook, go to Henrico Democrats on the website, and we have sign-up sheets. So we have sign-up sheets for Glen Day, sign-up sheets for the polls, and if you have questions, just email them.
And I would also like we don't take any time off. So always be out there engaging people. And when you go to vote, do the buddy system. Take somebody with you. Take 2 people, take 3 people, take your neighbor, take somebody from church. If you have a church family, ask the pastor, hey, can I borrow the church van for a little bit? We got some voting stuff to do.
Curbside voting.
Yes.
That's something that
Yes. Right.
Curbside voting is very important. I just registered 3 people who weren't voting because they couldn't get to the polls and didn't know about curbside voting. And so now I've got rides for them and they're,
And
3 more people for you.
And curbside voting is if you show up at the polls and the individual that you're driving can't get out of the car, you just walk up and say, I need someone to do curbside voting, and an election official will come outside, will take their ballot right at the car. So people do not have to get out, especially when it gets cold and rainy. It is, they sit in the car and someone brings the ballot to them.
Did you have a question?
I had a good question. I'm a political junkie. I've been very impressed with your campaign from the beginning, especially your ads. I noticed recently that the ad decided to go crazy with its negative ads that came out about high schools, which to me is just insane. Is it your plan over the next 60 days to stay positive, or are we? I know Dave Brad's a very easy target.
So I firmly believe that in order to win, it's issue of turnout. In order to turn people out, you have to give people something to vote for. It is within our plan to develop some contrast ads where we're talking about voting records versus what it is that I have to offer. But there will not be, demonizing personal attacks. I do think that, I'll stand up to any bully, and I believe him at times to be a bully. And so, in that case, I will correct the record when he is wrong. But ultimately speaking, when people know what it is that politically he stands for and what it is that politically I stand for, that is how we will.
That's how we win.
We got your back. You know that, right? Yeah. Just saying. Just letting you know. We got your back.
So of course you have a Facebook Live question. So one of my friends on Facebook Live is asking, can you clarify your position on immigration?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I'll just look at
Yeah.
Never done Facebook Live. So my position on immigration is that, fundamentally, from a values perspective, immigration has made us the country that we are. Immigration has allowed us to grow and expand because we've been the nation that has taken explorers and risk takers who are willing to leave everything behind to come here on the belief that they could achieve something great in this country. It's foundationally who we are and what makes us great. I find it troubling that so often border security and immigration are conflated as issues because, in fact, when we're talking about border security, we need a strong border, be that the actual land border, be that points of entry. I worked for CIA. I am well aware of the threats that do exist against this country and am absolutely in favor of ensuring that we keep our country safe first and foremost. But that is separate from how it is that we treat the people who want to come here in search of a better life and want to bring their skills to this country. Among the immigration-related topics, we absolutely need a solution for dreamers, for young people who were brought here through no fault of their own. This is the only country they know. They absolutely need to be able to continue bringing their skills and their gifts and their excitement to essentially what is their home country. For individuals who came here on TPS, the temporary protective status, I think it is wrong and detrimental not just to our economy but to the stability of other nations that the president has unilaterally just struck down TPS agreements that exist or TPS status of individuals from a variety of different countries. And then long term, we need bipartisan immigration reform because we do need to ensure that people know what is the pathway that they can come to this country, that they can come here, engage, be a part of our community, pay taxes, have a good job, provide for their families. And that is something that we are going to have to do in a bipartisan manner. A couple years ago, the Senate passed a very strong bipartisan bill. It did not even and get a vote in the House. So for people who think this is not an issue that can be solved in a bipartisan manner or agreed to in a bipartisan manner, we've been down this road before. The Senate did it. The House would have voted to approve it. Boehner wouldn't even let it come. Speaker Boehner wouldn't let it come to a vote. Just this past year, as we heard about all of the fights back and forth about the compromise bill or the Goodlatte bill. Well, the compromise bill was just a compromise among Republicans, but in fact, there had been a real compromise bill that was put forth, the Aguilar-Hurd bill, wholly bipartisan, proposed by a Republican and a Democrat, that would have addressed a number of different concerns related to how it is that we achieve comprehensive immigration reform in a way that honors our values, respects people who want to come here, recognizes that there's an economic need for workers at all levels within our communities, and really tries to ensure that we are moving forward as a country and ensuring that people who do come here are able to do so in a way that grows this country and also protects them.
We've hit our 4 o'clock hour, and Abigail has some other things she has to do yet tonight. We're not going to let her go home yet.
Chesterfield.
Chesterfield, yes. And you guys are doing really well at canvassing in RICO, but we need more canvassers. And I would love it if some of you would come up, if you haven't signed up to canvass, talk to me. We go out, we're starting next weekend. On Saturday, we're going to go out at 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and 4 o'clock, and Sunday it's 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. And we can go out of our RICO office, which is right off 64 on Parham. It's easy, convenient, and it's the one-on-one contacts that we make with the board that can make a difference to get someone to decide to vote. Just having someone have a conversation, say a little bit that you know about Abigail, can make the difference. And it can just be a handful of votes, as we know, that can turn an election. So please, as you're coming out, I'm going to bug anybody I can find, but please also just sign up. Thank you.
So we just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has come out. Thank you for your support for the Abigail Spanberger campaign. Canvassing is important. Short outing is important. On your way out, please take these signs. Put it in your yard. Even if you don't live in VA-07, you know people. And people will drive by your home and say, hey, Chronicle is supporting, but you're never supporting Abigail Spanberger for Congress. So every vote matters. You have a voice, so use your voice and help encourage this vote. Thank you again.
So what do you think?
That was good. That was awesome.